Hello and welcome to the Northland Artists Conversation. My name is Mark Kelly. I am your host on this amazing journey. Normally over there, excuse me, we have my colleague Andrew McKenzie. Andrew is once again in the driver's seat tonight. He has been looking after all the cameras, making sure that everything looks good and sounds and looks like $1,000,000. So thanks very much. It's appreciated. It's good as always. Piet Nieuwland. Wow. Man, you know, this was really, really interesting. We had originally booked Piet a couple of weeks ago. Actually, no, it'll be quite a few weeks ago by the time this comes out. And I had to reschedule because I had a migraine, which was a real bummer because I was really looking forward to sitting down with Piet, having a talk with him, learning about his journey, because he's been a poet for decades, and people, we talk with everyone from every sort of artistic sphere, with a huge age range. So the people that have been doing their craft for a really long time, it's always good to get a bit of an insight into them and how they got there and what their journey was. So it was, very unfortunate that I had to reschedule, but Piet was super cool about it, and he was able to come back and record with us. So really, really stoked. Really interesting things that came out of today's podcast. This podcast. One of those sorts of dudes that, initially, when we were talking with him beforehand, he was like, I don't know if I've got a lot to talk about. And I was like, that's cool. We'll talk about as much or as little as you want. So it's totally up to you. There's no issues at all. But, man, when he got going, he was awesome. And he's got some great stories to tell. There's a few parts through it where there's some really interesting highlights, including the time he pretty much biked the entire length of New Zealand. Have a listen. It's amazingly fascinating. He had such an interesting life, and we're fortunate enough to be able to sit down and talk with him about it. So without further ado, let's sit down and have a conversation with Piet Nieuwland. Going to be a really interesting night. What about you, Piet?
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. I think I am as well. And first off, welcome to the Northland Artists Conversation.
Right, thanks, Mike. Thanks. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. And
yes, migraines aside, it was cool that you were understanding. We had you originally scheduled for a couple of weeks ago, and we had to postpone because I had a migraine. Bloody horrible thing. So thank you for being so accommodating. Really appreciate it.
No, more than welcome. I hope I didn't cause a migraine after you read my notes.
No, not at all. No, I tell you what. So, everyone that watches or listens to the podcast knows, or should know by now, that we always send out a pre-interview and sign-off form. And yours is filled out. A lot of good information there. What we've found sometimes is that, like in some of the sections, I'll hold it up for the camera here. The information that's there, sometimes people can write like novels, and then the writing gets incredibly small, and I can't read it. So thank you for writing a good amount of information, but not too much.
Okay. That's what poets do.
Yeah, it's that right amount of information, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. What now, do you call yourself a poet?
Yes. Yeah, when I remember to, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Right. You remember to. And how long have you been now? We've got the wide shot here. This is going to pick up some of these books here. Now we've got some books that range from the big yellow one at the back, which was 1995, through to your most recent one, which is this one here, which is...
That's right, that was last year.
That's last year, which is as light into water. So my camera's going to pick that up, which is quite cool.
Yeah.
How long have you been a poet for? I guess would be my first question.
Well, probably about at least 40 years, like
Wow.
seriously writing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I used to read when I was at school and at university, and books of, anthologies of New Zealand poetry, like the regulars like James K. Baxter and Sam Hunt. And,
Yeah.
and there's a very book that was edited by Vincent O'Sullivan, I think, Anthology of New Zealand Poetry, which went right back to the early colonial poets up to what was then the most recent.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which was interesting, and yeah, all of those early New Zealand poets I've kind of digested, but in terms of writing, actually I should go back one step. So whenever anyone says if you want to be a poet, the best thing to do is to read.
Okay.
So it's
Okay,
actually
I've heard that.
to read poetry.
Right.
So that's the best thing to start off with.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that was I did that before writing very much at all. But once I finished university and I had a bit more I was working, but I still had time on my hands.
Yeah. Yep.
Then I kind of really got into it and read a lot more widely, history and all sorts of novels and poetry and stuff from all over the place.
Okay. So it wasn't.
And then I was really kind of writing. I was seriously writing then.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned school, so let's go back. To young Pete, like really young whippersnapper Pete. When were you always someone that read? Did you sort of have a voracious appetite for reading, or did that sort of come along a bit later on? How did that start?
I think I've always been interested in reading, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, there's all. Dr. Zeus is.
Oh, it's a great place to start.
I don't know whether I didn't start there, but I do have I still have some of the early books that I first.
Oh, wow.
Really got engaged with.
Yeah.
One of them was a book of a balloon trip across Europe that some young kid and his father had done.
Okay.
And that was entrancing. But the other one was a small dictionary that my auntie from Holland gave me when she visited us one time when I was young. And it was a Maori place names and what they meant.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that was like it was only the half the size of half a matchbox.
Yeah.
But you could carry it around everywhere, and I've still got it.
Oh, what? Do you really?
Yeah, I guess I could have bought it. The reeds.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So we would travel around on holiday, driving around in the car, and I would be able to kind of identify the meaning of each place name as we went through it, and each bridge that you'd cross they always had a name.
Yeah,
on the side of them,
yeah.
Everywhere has a Maori name, and the meaning of it. So that things like that kind of started like a knowledge of the landscape, which I've subsequently kind of complemented that with other information from other sources. But
did you do a lot of travelling around New Zealand when you were younger? Bit of tripping around?
Yeah, well, I guess we went on holiday.
Yeah.
So we lived initially in Opunake and Stratford, and then later in Cambridge and Hamilton. And my mother's parents lived down in New Plymouth, so we would frequently travel down that amazing coast
Oh, it's beautiful.
Taranaki coast.
Yeah, my grandparents, when they were alive, bless them, they lived in Hawera.
Oh, right. Hawera's
Gorgeous.
that's right. It's amazing. Oh, that's interesting you should say that, because there's lots of amazing people have come out of Hawera.
Yes.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
And continue to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, I grew up in Gisborne, and mum and dad, myself and my younger brother, we would often go down to Palmy and then up across. Gorgeous. I still remember doing all the things that you shouldn't do as a kid with grandma and granddad, like putting stones in dad's fuel tank. I was that child.
Right.
How long were you in? Yeah, I know. I am sorry, Dad. How long were you in New Plymouth, Taranaki for before moving?
I guess I was about till 4 or 5.
Oh, okay, right.
And two of my sisters were born there, and then we shifted up to Cambridge. But we would go down on the train, because there used to be a train that would travel from Hamilton down
to New
through
Plymouth.
Taumarunui, down to Stratford, and then up to New Plymouth. And that was like just a magical.
Because
at night and through the tunnels, and just incredible.
Yeah,
So
that would
I
be
have
amazing.
a deep kind of love for all that country.
Yeah, Taumarunui is beautiful. It's a little bit off the beaten track, but it is well worth a visit. And I think, because Lord knows I've done my fair share of driving in New Zealand, but going from say Auckland to Wellington, you'd often go Taupo, Turangi, Desert Road. But if you go the other way through like Awakuni, Taumarunui, it's just beautiful and scenic, and it's you don't forget it.
No, it's just the shape of the hills, the papa slopes, and the incredibly steep hillsides, and the valleys.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Mm.
What was school like for you?
School was in Cambridge. That's where I started off.
Yeah.
I think I always enjoyed going to school, actually. Yeah.
Were you like studious, or were you sporty, or sort of in the creative?
Must have been a combination of all of that.
Okay.
I think. Yeah. I was sporty, but I liked playing football. When I got a bicycle, that's when my world really opened up, and so I started cycling everywhere. And one of those trips that I did at school was from Hamilton down to New Plymouth, one school holidays, and then the next year I cycled back again. And that was just kind of like I was familiar with the road, and it was a real adventure.
That's a hell of a bike ride.
It was, well, it took 3 days, but on an old, like a 3-speed bike, carrying a tent and a rubber lilo. And when I think back on it, I think I must have been mad with all that weight.
Yeah.
Because I learnt very quickly that you don't do it like that.
No.
So later on, when I had enough money to buy a 10-speed bicycle, I lightened everything up considerably. So
well, it would have been an old
easier
canvas tent.
It was a canvas tent.
Yeah, they're heavy. I mean, we used to go camping. We had a canvas tent. Those things, it was a 2-person job comfortably.
Yeah, just a little.
Yeah, very weighty.
Yeah, and the lilo. Oh God, rubber lilo.
Oh, yeah, I know. I remember having those as well. Hilarious. When did you first start getting an inkling that you wanted to do more than just read poetry or read books? When did you is there a moment where you go, right here?
Oh, well, there was a teacher I think it was in the third or fourth form.
Andrew,
I'm
producer
not,
Andrew.
I'm not sure what year that is.
What year is third form, please?
9.
That is year 9 now.
I
I don't know.
Third form?
Third form?
No, yeah, well, third form.
Year
was-
8.
I can't
No.
even translate it. Hang on.
No, we're gonna work it out. Anyway,
No.
third form.
Pretty third form might have been even earlier than that actually, but
So at intermediate,
was-
like form 2 maybe?
yeah. All around then there was, life was interesting, and I guess English was interesting too, and writing stories about just what you did in the holidays or what did you do in the weekend.
Yeah.
And so I was able to come up with some quite interesting things that my teacher was kind of flabbergasted by.
Do you remember your teacher's name?
Well, I remember one teacher, Miss Bromley. She was
Ms. Bromley?
Miss Bromley.
Miss
yeah,
Bromley.
at Cambridge Intermediate.
Yeah.
She was a very good teacher. Yeah. I can't remember the others.
That's all right.
now,
That's all right.
right offhand, at that point.
Yeah, it's different for everyone. I mean, I have the one teacher that I remember that said you should do acting, and his name is Norman McLean, and he lives in Gisborne.
Right.
And he was my mentor for decades. He was,
Yeah.
when I hit
yeah.
Form 4 or Year 10, as I've just been politely told how it works.
Okay.
That's when I kind of did my first proper play.
Oh, right.
From that point onwards, so I completely understand. So you've got your bike, you're going out, you're having these experiences, and you're starting to write them down. Are they written as short stories, or are they more sort of like, Homer's The Odyssey is considered?
No, nothing like that.
Nothing.
No, just
Nothing
maybe
that
just
lengthy.
nothing. No, maybe just little fragments here and there. The first real bike or story that I wrote about cycling was actually later when I finished university, and I did a road trip from Bluff right up through central Otago, then the west coast, and across to Nelson and Golden Bay, and then back up through the central North Island and back down the road from through Whangamomata to Stratford, and all crisscrossing the North Island up to Kaikoui.
So you biked from
And
Bluff to Kaikoui.
I wrote
Hopefully a 10 speed.
certainly a 10 speed, and then there was some a part of that I wrote an article for a magazine running at the time called Southern Cyclist.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, and that was it was sort of put everything together. Yeah.
2 questions. There's a 2-parter. How long did that take? And was there a particular reason for doing it?
It took. It must have probably taken a couple of months. So I remember.
Wow.
Stopping at in Hamilton for Christmas dinner. That was kind of like a good place to stop.
Timed very well. Timed very well.
Yeah.
I ran out of money. Can someone give me food?
Yeah. But why did I do it? Well, it's just I'm not sure. It was just like a good way to just finish university and just empty out again, and really
Right.
Just take some time out, and because I'd been keeping fit all the way through university, cycling around various places at Canterbury.
Right. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was very much part of my life as well. Just
What'd you study at university?
forestry science.
Okay. Interesting choice.
It was at the time. It was right and what inspired me to get involved in that was the events around the West Coast Beach Scheme. They were proposals to fell all of the beech forests down there and turn them into pine forests, and There's a
Oh, wow.
massive, the beginning of lots of the Native Forest Action Council in
Right.
particular.
Okay. Yeah.
People might remember that.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, so so all of the amazing native forests that we still have, like, Whirinaki and Puketi and the forests of the west coast. At some point they were proposed for logging, or they were being logged, and
Wow.
so that the campaigns involved in protecting those forests led me to, you can either be an activist on the outside, which is all very effective, but I also saw there was an opportunity to be someone on the inside.
Yeah, make change within.
As well,
Yeah.
everything works together. So that's why I started up doing forestry science, and then at the end of that I got a job up in Kaikoui, working in kauri forests.
So you thought, I'm not doing anything for the next couple of months. Might just quickly jump on the bike.
That's right.
And,
yeah, well,
and
it's
see where it takes me.
good opportunity. I didn't have to start until, when was it?
It's amazing.
Start of the year.
Yeah.
I just said, oh look, I'll begin at,
Yeah, I'll be there at the start of Feb.
something like that, and and then I showed up. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing though. What a great story. And were you writing not just for the Southern Cyclist, but were you writing poetry on the trip as well? Because you would have seen some gorgeous places.
I did, but no, there's no diaries of that.
Wow.
No, it was just an internal kind of a visual, digestion of the landscape, really. And I found that I could go after that, look at unnamed photos of New Zealand, and go, oh yeah, that's there.
Yeah.
This is that lake, just somewhere.
Yeah.
And most of the time I was right.
Yeah.
It's kind of just getting to know the landscape was and the shape of it, and just the contours of the hills, and something intimate about riding them on a bicycle. I mean, walking them is a different kind of experience, but this was like you could go a lot further, and it was easier in some respects,
and quicker.
Yeah,
definitely quicker.
Yeah.
So you're up in. So you've gone from. I gotta see if I get this right. You Plymouth, well, Taranaki,
yeah,
Waikato,
yeah,
down to Canterbury,
yeah,
and then up to the beautiful. Well, I can't say winterless north because it's the 8th of December today, and it's been hosing down all day.
I choose to say it's less winter.
They've
got it round the wrong way.
So it's not winter less; it's less winter north.
Yes,
awesome.
Yeah, it sort of tends to be milder than we don't have frosts here anymore.
No,
and it's shorter, probably shorter.
Yeah, I was just saying, I don't think we had a frost this year, did we? We might have only had one or two.
I haven't had a frost probably for about the last 8 or 10 years.
Oh wow!
Where I live, no, there used to be, but not anymore.
Which area do you live?
Out of just south of Whangarei, out towards Wangakaramia.
Oh right, okay. Oh, and no frost out there. Okay, that's interesting.
No, not in the particular location where we are.
Yeah.
I mean, there may be some down in the valleys, but
yeah. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're up in Kaikoui. You've got the job looking after the Kauri forests.
That's right.
How long are you there for? And are you writing much at all during this period of time? Is this where you start really knuckling down?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, and just sort of freed from education, and I'm now my own person. Well, I always am, but this is. I started I was writing then poetry, because those days, Muldoon was in power and everything was just crazy. There were all these, all the 80s, all these social movements and environmental movements,
Rogernomics,
and all sorts of things flowing over people and people having to deal with it. And so there was a lot to write about.
Yeah,
and
I can
so
imagine.
At one point, so I did we had a small group of people in Kaikoui where it was sort of like a theatre. It's called the Little Theatre, and they used to do plays, and we had a jazz and poetry evening, and I started reading at that.
Oh wow!
And
okay,
that was my first kind of performance as stand-up. And it was like, oh yeah, shit, this is cool.
Nice.
I
Okay.
know this is good,
Mhm.
and I just myself, felt good, and
You getting the reception that's sort of coming from the people saying, "Well, I don't suck."
no, it seemed pretty positive. And then I have found out about the Globe, which was a poetry venue in downtown Auckland, and I went down to that one time. It's it's in a pub, and there was I don't know 100 people there, and I was from Kaikoui, and I read these poems that I'd written in Kaikoui, and I was like just on top of the world. I got a really good response.
Did you bike down or
No,
not
I
that
didn't.
time?
No, not that time. No. But yeah, so that's when the bug really got me, and
was it the writing or performance bug? That
Well,
got you?
that was
or
that
are
was
they
the perform.
linked together.
I guess they go together, because I don't get up there and not know what I'm doing. I'm always very well prepared. I know exactly what I'm going to read, but the actual getting up and live in front of an audience is a different kind of energy to it. And so you can read something on a piece of paper in a certain way, but when you hear the poet reading it in with their own accent and voice,
Also, the way it's meant
and
to
the
be.
way it's the rhythm, it changes completely. Poems can take a whole different life when they're articulated live.
Mm.
Yeah.
Northland Artists Conversation is incredibly proud to support Rayburn House. Rayburn House is an art gallery located in the town basin in Whangarei. Rayburn House is the oldest house that's in the Whangarei city limits. Got converted into an art gallery, and it's an absolutely amazing space. They hold exhibitions all year round, and it's a lot of different stuff in there. So you might have like pottery one week or digital media another. You might have like mixed media. Lots of really, really cool exhibitions they have in there. They have these really fun opening nights as well that you can go to if you're invited, and it's where the artists kind of get to mingle with other people as well, and you really get to celebrate what's on presentation, what's on offer. They've also got a lovely little area as well where they have sort of different little bits and pieces that you can buy if you want to as well, and really support Rayburn House. So such a fantastic organisation. Northland Artists Conversation is incredibly proud to support Rayburn House. So you're in Auckland and you're doing these performances at the Globe after, and I guess this is a sort of it's a bigger stage from what you've been doing in Kaikoui.
Very much so.
How did you find that, as someone who's been an on-stage performer? The adrenaline behind it it's very a rush. What was it like for you? Because I mean, poets traditionally, writers, aren't centre stage. They're sort of more in the background, right?
Yeah. Well,
they can be.
They can be. Well, there was. I mean, it was. There would be like maybe 10 or 15 people reading just off the floor, come up in a sequence, and then there would be a guest poet, every night. It was every Tuesday night.
Wow.
And so yes, poets from all over the country and Auckland would come in and perform there, and it was an adrenaline rush. It was an affirmation that what I was saying was it was positively received. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it, and just the camaraderie and meeting other poets, and it was fun. And it was. I ended up leaving Kaikoui and going and living in Auckland.
Really?
Shifted my job down there.
Wow.
And it was almost a religious kind of. I have to go there every
Tuesday.
Every Tuesday.
Yeah.
No matter what, which I pretty much did.
How many years did you go for?
It's probably a couple of, certainly, all of 84 and 85, probably.
Right
and then
in the height of National's
all
sort of
sorts of
stranglehold on New Zealand politics.
and the anti-nuclear movement. And
David Longy,
David
yes.
Longy, and
You can smell the uranium on the breath.
that's right.
The great comments.
It was brilliant. So all of that was a lively. Auckland was a lively place, and it was being demolished a little bit later on too. You know, there was like the share market crash in '87.
Yeah.
That was. So I met some great people. There was a bunch of us, like John Paulet and David Eagleton, Sandra Bell, Kim Blackburn, Alex Staines, and a few others. We kind of had this little group that we would do live performances around cafes and in Auckland and various other venues, and
What? I guess. I mean, you know, there's. I don't really know how to say this, so I'm going to show my ignorance a little bit. But again, this is all in the learning. You know, we do these podcasts to learn and gather information. What is your style of poetry?
That's a good question.
That's what I'm here for. I'm here for good questions. Because you've got like people that write, that do like slam poetry, people that do, Shakespeare poetry, or haikus or any of that sort of stuff. Do you define yourself as having a style, or is your style Piet Nieuwland?
I don't actually identify with a particular style, or I don't try to be a particular style. I just be myself, and that whatever comes out. Probably the best way to do it is to actually do it.
Yeah. So plenty of reading and then just do it.
Yeah. So I mean, I can give you a poem now if you like.
Go on. What do you want to do? Do you want to do one from a book?
I'll give you one from that particular time.
Oh, yeah. Have you got one that you're thinking of?
Well, I've done it so many times before.
Okay.
It's like,
well, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be pretty amazing. Have we, producer Andrew? Have we ever had anyone on read a poem on the podcast? No, we haven't. This will be a first.
Singers.
We've had someone sing. Someone sang to us last night. That was guest Sophie Sparrow. She sang. She was the first singer. We've had someone read a short story, but never a poem. So, Piet Nieuwland with a poem from the 80s. Take it away.
Okay. Well, it's called The Atoll, Mururoa Atoll.
Mururoa Atoll, yeah.
Okay, so under the meniscus of a splendent gentian violet lagoon, fragile indigo hyperbole, saturate filamentous rhodophyta, flexile in the olivine euphotic zone, and chromatic aquatic placentalia resonate with a diapson of mazarine currents, spumescent on arcs of flavonoid quartz.
Holy shit!
I'll just leave it at that. It goes more and more and more. But
wow,
that is. I try and use scientific language.
Yeah.
So as far as I'm concerned, all language,
Yes.
all kinds of jargon, vernacular, whatever, they're words, and you can use them in
Yeah.
poetry. So there's
Oh,
no
yeah,
there's
makes
no
sense.
particular rule to say you can't speak a certain way or not. I mean, you know.
Wow.
So, but because my education is, kind of been more of in a scientific,
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Your
so I've
forestry.
done-
Yeah.
and at school I had, I did biology and physics and maths
Yeah.
and chemistry, and that's the kind of language. And then at university I really enjoyed soils and geology and that kind of thing.
Wow.
So
okay.
all of that kind of comes together, and that's what I enjoy using. So that's the poetry of the natural world,
Yeah.
the language of the natural world.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow. That was amazing. Thank you. Thank you very
All right.
much.
that's cool.
That's there you go, producer Andrew.
So it's a protest.
Edit that one.
It's a protest poem, actually, about.
Is it really?
Well, it is, because it's the language. It's about as extreme scientific,
There's a
concise language as I could find.
Yeah.
It's
Like you took all the scientific words and
compress it into as a protest against the explosions that were occurring on Mururoa at the time.
Yeah. For people that may not know or might be a bit younger, Mururoa Atoll is where they did a lot of the nuclear testing.
That's right.
There was they would often drop bombs in the atoll. It was quite a lot. That was the United States that was doing it.
That was
time?
France.
France.
Mururoa was France, but
Yeah.
there were all throughout numerous islands throughout the Pacific were bombed with atomic bombs, hydrogen bombs.
Yeah, they were pretty
during
devastating.
those times. Yeah. So, fortunately, that doesn't happen anything
No, and I
Anymore,
think that's a good
as far
thing.
as I know. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And it's interesting because there was that point in time in the late 80s, I guess maybe late 80s, early 90s, where they were looking at bringing nuclear power in to New Zealand, and I remember being in that intermediate, couple of years of intermediate, first couple of years of high school, and it was all keep New Zealand nuclear free,
Exactly.
and it was a huge deal at the time, and a lot of people take it for granted now, but at the time there was massive debate about it, because if we were going to stay nuclear free, we were going to lose America as an ally because they had nuclear warships. So there was a lot of political manoeuvring. So a very topical poem.
That was
Yeah.
fun to write.
When did you write that, just out of curiosity?
It's probably 85, something around about.
Wow.
Yeah. So at that time, the whole country was mobilised, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely
Really,
was.
It was
Yep.
everywhere.
It was
It was
a
a
nation.
remarkable
Yep.
change in the way that New Zealand saw itself. Well, that's how I see it anyway.
No, I
That's
agree.
what it felt like. It felt like it.
I agree with that, and I was a kid at the time. I remember Mum and Dad being behind it. I remember it being a huge thing at school. I remember it being all over the news. It was a huge time.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely a pivotal moment in New Zealand's growth.
The whole cultural history.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But once that settled down, I kind of got into. I had some children too. That makes a difference to
Really?
your life.
It
So
does.
I have two children,
Yep.
or two daughters. That were born then, and I needed to settle down. So I ended up going back to Kaikoui and working for the Department of Conservation.
Really? Working
Yeah.
for Doc. That's one of producer Andrew's dream companies.
It's always been kind of sought after
Yeah.
place to work.
Yeah.
There's it's not always quite as it seems.
I don't think any government department is, though, is it?
No, it isn't. That's right. Far from it. No. So yeah, I mean, so I worked there for about 25 years, and
in Kaikoui.
And
With Doc.
with Doc, but then we shifted to Whangarei.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What you had your daughters in Auckland or in Kaikoui?
One in Auckland, one in Kaikoui.
Right. Okay. And why Kaikoui? Just out of curiosity. Why did you pick to go back there and not Whangarei or Kerikeri?
Well, there was a job.
Or
There was a
Kaitaia?
job there that because I'd left. I actually left the Forest Service. I'd resigned before the major environmental restructuring.
Right.
And so I spent a couple of years kind of in the wilderness, just writing and wandering around reading poetry.
Right. Okay.
With some friends.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, that was quite good.
Yeah, the formative years.
Yeah. And but it kind of like the poetry is the most important thing. That was really when it came down to it.
So you're using that time to sort of hone your craft and
just not working, and I guess drawing and painting as well. There was always a bit of that.
Really? Okay.
All the way through is kind of like it kind of emerges at various times. And
right. Okay. So poetry's kind of been there, whereas the other the drawing and paintings
paintings
has ebbs and flows to it.
Yeah, that's photography, all of that.
Oh wow.
Kind of visual sort of artistry. Yeah.
Okay. Do you still do much of that? Are any of the covers for the Fast Fibers poetry?
Well, that most.
This one?
That's my most recent book.
Yeah.
That's a piece out of one of my paintings, rather. Yeah, that's on the cover, and that one as well is one of.
So we go. I'll throw those up to camera so we can see. So obviously that's the most recent book, but obviously that's also from a piece of your art as well, yeah?
Yeah, so that's every year for the last 9 years we've done an anthology of Northland poetry, yeah. So,
self-published?
I guess I
Are you the publisher?
I guess I could call myself the publisher of that, yeah. And I Olivia McCassie, who's a poet, she helps me with that.
Okay.
With the editing and all of the detailed kind of
the layout and structure,
the fine
format,
fine things, yeah.
Nice. Okay. Now, how you're in? That's a good question. That's a good question. I want to ask that one. You said that you were in Kaikoui and you became a dad to 2 beautiful daughters.
That's right.
How did your writing change?
I think I wrote much longer.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, more narrative, more pages of text about what I was, all of the things that I was feeling in the world. Like issues with work and issues with relationships and children and other people around me. That all just sort of came together. It was all a bit of a blur, really.
But paper was obviously where you were sort of getting everything out.
Yeah, so there were 4 or 5 kind of thin volumes that I've put together, just compiled and.
Oh wow!
I don't have them there at the moment, but so prior to that, to mobilisation, there must be half a dozen others that come before that.
Right.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about mobilisation. I'm going to put my paperwork down for a moment. Mobilisation is the one that we've got here, and we obviously talked about this at the start. This one came out in 95. Now it's interesting because you've got mobile, as in like the petrol station, the I, and then zation, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got mobile as in mobile phone, then eyes as in the two eyes, and then nation. It's a very, very interesting use of words.
Yeah.
Don't know.
I know. It was the eye, and those are two eyes, the eyes of my of my girlfriend at the time, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So is this your drawing
Yeah, yeah.
as well? Sorry, producer Andrew wants to have a wee look. There we go. He's having a wee look. Are you throwing it to the wide? Yeah, throwing it to the wide. There we go. Andrew could do that. It's great. And this is obviously the first book that you published.
Well,
That you've brought today.
that's the one that I bought today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I quite like those poems, and they're kind of overtly political, and they're kind of got all sorts of interesting things in them from my point of view.
And so this came out in 95, so this would have been a few years worth of work. What is the sort of what are we writing about in here? What sort of topics? What things had captured your imagination?
Well, let's have a look.
There you go.
It's in the. Have a look. It's.
Because I mean, I always find it really interesting to find out. We've had a few authors on, and it's always interesting to find out where the inspiration comes from or what was going on at that particular point in time in someone's life.
It's really a lot about the fun of relationships.
The fun of relationships?
Yeah.
Yes, I think we all know the fun of relationships.
The emotional...
We're all adults.
The emotional dynamics and the work that I was doing for Te Papa Ata Whai Doc, and that always... So, I mean, again, I mean, I could read one of these poems too, which is...
I mean, sure, why not?
Why not?
I mean, we've broken that seal tonight. It'd be great to have another one. It's like it's like I'm sitting in the studio and I'm producer Andrew and I are getting a bit of a private reading, but then we've got the viewers and the listeners that are going to get a little bit of a special treat as well. This is really cool.
I don't remember this one, but
that's all right. Got some glasses. Okay. We're gonna work with that.
I'll read you one of these. Oh golly, what are we gonna do?
I know, it's always interesting going back and sort of revisiting some stuff. And then you can sort of figure out the path, because obviously the first one that you were able to recite off the top of your head, that's 10 years before this.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's called In This Nervous Age.
In This Nervous Age.
In this nervous age, asteroids are shipwrecked on darkness. The moon is an ear to the rows of winds. Your eyelids open with wings. Shattered horizons unleash singing flags. Wounded corals bleed sunsets. Paper nautilus frequent coasts of milky ways. Latitudes sprout vegetal octopi. Surf pushes like fern fronds. Volcanoes give birth to bony pyramids. Pigeons calculate epochs of fruit. Your eyes are satellite glances. Trains pass full of flowers and guava. Sadness colonizes paths hanging from the sky. Antipodean turtles carry mouths of swollen kisses. Abel Tasman chases kites of albatrosses. Ancient horses ride the aurora australis. Gossips of superstrings nest in clouds. Butterflies chant equinoxes of hydrangeas. Your hair is quilted with secrets of night. A necklace of tears swallow your breasts. You're a cool, white lily slipping into embrace, soft silver on the loquat pi waka waka, a sylph on X's of polar sapphires.
Wow. Producer Andrew, definitely round of applause. There was there was one line in there that I thought that really hit home, and it's I don't even know why, but it was as soon as you said it, I was like, yeah, I like that those three words that go together. Sadness colonizes paths, and I was like, yeah, that's amazing.
All right, cool.
That's great.
I'm glad. Thank you.
Such a dark phrase. Well, it's when I years of writing metal lyrics, and not all metal doesn't really sing about sunshine and rainbows traditionally. Maybe that's why I was drawn to it. Yeah, that's great. Thank you again,
Cool.
man. 2 in a podcast. Oh, we're going to get spoiled. That's brilliant. Cool. Okay, so your kids,
Right.
in Kaikoui, growing up, they're obviously they go through school in Kaikoui as well.
No, we shifted down to Whangarei.
Shifted to Whangarei,
and
yep.
then we split up, and they went back up with their mother up to the Hokianga, and I stayed working in Whangarei.
Yeah. Okay. You still
Yeah, oh, very much so. Now the youngest one's got two
kids of their
lovely
own.
children. Yeah.
Oh, how cool!
Yeah.
Granddad Pete, or is it Papa? Which one is
Papa
it?
Pete.
It's Papa Pete. Of course it is. That's so cool. Now you're in Whangarei, still working for Doc.
Yeah.
You're still very much looking after the land. Still writing.
Very much so. Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, as an artist, when you go through a turbulent life period, can often produce some great material.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's when I had my first painting exhibition, and when I first came to Whangarei, that was in a gallery. What was it? I can't remember the name of it. Can't remember the name.
Is it still
it's
around?
no longer in
no
existence.
Longer, of course not. Yeah.
No, but anyway, that was fun because it was all these paintings and then the poems that went with the paintings because they often.
You'd have the painting and the words sort of next to them or underneath them?
No, but at the opening, we went around the room and each painting had poems that went with it.
Right.
So
and
that was part of it. So I read the poems
wow.
that went with the paintings. Yeah,
that's very cool.
Because they were both. It was all.
It's all linked
created
together,
at the
right?
same time.
Yeah. Very mixed media, I think, is what they say.
Mm.
Wow, that's really interesting, and obviously received very well.
Yeah. I got something in the newspaper about that, and sold a few, so that was good.
Hey, that's always a bonus.
Yeah.
Bit of extra cash.
Yeah. So and I've kind of done that a few times since I've been here. So the most recent exhibition was at the Hangar Gallery.
Oh yes. I know where the Hangar Gallery is.
With Barry and Megan.
Mm-hmm.
And and that was fun. That was right in the middle of COVID, but
oh wow, that is very recent. Yeah.
So that was it last year? At the same time as that, as Light into Water. So that I kind of combined the launch of that book with that painting exhibition.
You have this launch at Hangar 18 Gallery, and you've got your artwork, and you've got your poetry, and you've also got your book that you launch all simultaneously, all at once.
Yeah.
Which I have to say is actually incredibly impressive. A lot of artists struggle to get one, not three at the same time. So that's very cool. I was wondering if you'd do us the honour of reading something from As Light into Water, and something that would have been part of the artwork that you would have presented on that night as well, or in that
Sure.
exhibition. I'm finding this absolutely fascinating, and I think it's also a really interesting perspective, because we've been able to hear your journey from the poem in the 80s to the poem in the 90s to the poem of the 2020s. So there's a real nice continuity and flow there. So whenever you're ready,
I will read the title poem, which is
As Light into Water.
As Light into Water.
Here we go, Piet Nieuwland again, folks. Man, another first. This is amazing.
As light into water, the unrecognised potential of every hour is parabolic moon flight over Tussulin Azure, the seared sienna edges, Sumatran jungles that melt billows into smoke plumes, earth into air, into earth, steroid-fueled furies of commodified experience, the fires of perception, transcending the anthropocentric, the distance between us and how close we are, escapes of elastic rock on fault lines faster than sound speed, a dissolving view, dissolving temple silence in terraced pools under cliffs, tail fin flicker yellow, shining splash, black wing, white wing, flurry, speckle, sparkle, and tuckapoo flash, symbolic neutrinos, a night of pearls, spectral ice, luminescent needles, mirrored water, clouds of memory in forest gardens of your desire, spiced bridal honeydew, white tulips, a dream of silver ice, and possibly anything else under Corona Australis.
Wow. Amazing.
So that's kind of quite fun from my point of view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun for everyone that's watching and listening as well.
So there's
What's the story behind that poem, apart from Corona at the end? That gives it away.
Well, there's escapes of elastic rock. So, given the last sort of few years, we've had lots of earthquakes. So that there's a references to that.
Yeah.
And the anthropocentric, obviously, the change in human relationship to the environment.
Yep.
And there's a reference to the Sumatran jungles.
Yes, heard that.
So I did. I was over there when I was much younger. As a young man, spent a little bit of time over there.
Oh wow, okay.
And Tussulin Azure is an amazing place that I've never been to, but is in Algeria, and it's the site of a massive archaeological site with all this really old.
Yes, I know the one. Yeah, I thought that sounded familiar. Wow.
So I don't know. There's just a whole lot of things in there about our relationship to the environment and the ocean.
Yeah.
Fish. Yeah.
Yeah, mirrored water really hit me. I thought that was. I'd never thought of something as simple as that. But that's amazing.
Yeah, it's just. This poem. I mean, these poems are like written differently from the earlier ones.
Yeah,
that I
yeah,
read.
and you can hear it too.
Yeah, so there's. I guess because I've read a lot more in the intervening decades.
Yep.
And part of my reading in particular has been poetry and translation, which is I particularly enjoy mostly. So poetry that's translated from
another language,
from any other language.
Right. Yeah.
I'm just fascinated by it.
Who are your sort of go to poets? Who are the ones that like inspired you when you were younger, and the sort of the ones that you know are very aware of now that you go, yes, I you know, if they release anything, you have to read it or get it.
Sure. Well, in the early days, as I said earlier, there was a whole bunch of
The Kiwi guys, right?
New Zealand poets.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're all interesting. They're all you know, in their own particular way. There's a whole swath of them, and then later on, a friend of mine gave me a book of Pablo Neruda's poetry, and
Okay.
lots of anyone who's a poet would know Pablo
Pablo.
Neruda, or if they haven't read him yet, then I would urge them to check it out.
Spend a bit
because,
of time.
He's a remarkable. He writes originally in Spanish, but his poetry is translated into English and
Oh, wow.
numerous other languages.
Okay.
So the poetry of the Spanish literature. So Octavio Paz is another poet who had a lot of influence over me, and I've read lots of his work. And then others, Vallejo and Hudibras and Alberti, Spanish language poetry and Portuguese. So
Is there something about the language or the words they use that sort of
it must be
draws you?
the way that those languages are constructed is
Yeah. Okay.
different from English in the beginning starting point. So
Yeah.
the language that is the ideas that they convey just have a different kind of feel to them. And I'm just fascinated by that, and it's way more interesting than in my mind.
Yeah.
And you know, this is not.
This is your personal opinions.
This is my personal opinion. The way I
Yep.
feel about it is that
Yeah.
I just find I'm just drawn to the way that those poems are constructed and what they're saying. Same with you know, French too, and Italian.
Yeah.
It's nothing's lost in something might be lost in translation
Mm-hmm.
from those poems, but there's an enormous amount to be found, and it's what's found in them is the most is what I'm drawn to. Yeah.
If you had the ability to learn, you know, the Spanish or Portuguese, and you were to read those poems in the original text, do you think that you would gain more from that as opposed to just reading the translations?
No doubt, but the act of translation is itself, you know, it's an interpretation, and it's always an interpretation. Even if you're reading something written in your native language, you are interpreting it.
Yep.
Interpreting what the author wrote,
Mhm.
and there's always a particular angle that may or may not be taken, and so the translators always bring their own interpretation to the original poem.
Of course. Yeah,
And so
of course.
you know, I've read enough poems to see the same poem translated by different people,
Right, yep.
and when that happens, you see the different angles that they've taken on each line and
Yeah.
phrase, and go, oh yeah, one person went that way and another one went that way, and
Yeah.
then the next person did something slightly different, and I'm really interested in that.
Yeah,
But-
and, you know, everyone puts their own human spin.
That's right.
you know,
Yeah.
which in itself would be absolutely amazing, because, you know, you might get one poem with 6 different versions.
That's right.
Essentially,
Yes.
and they're all right. They're all correct. Like, they're not wrong.
Yeah.
But it's just they're viewed through the lens of the interpreter, essentially
right.
another artist.
That's right. And when you think about global geopolitics,
Yes.
where would we be without translation? The United Nations would cease to operate.
Yeah, it'd be
I
terrible.
mean, it's really an incredibly important role in society, and not really valued as much as it should be.
Yeah, it should be.
I think. So I rest my case. I have numerous arguments with people about this.
Right.
It's just
A heated topic. Yeah. But that's good. I mean, I will play devil's advocate here for just a moment. I feel as a society, we've lost the ability for oral communication. If it's not posted online on social media about the amazing meal I had or how I'm living my best life, then it isn't real. When in actuality, it seems to be harder now to live in the moment without going, yes, I'm living in the moment through my camera.
Exactly.
So yeah, and have we lost? Are we lost? Are we losing the art of communication?
Yes. Well, in some ways, communication is a two-way.
It is.
It's definitely not. It's an exchange. It's
It
not
is.
if we only think it's if we think that the radio or any news media are a communication organisation, they're broadcasting out. It's going out, but the important part is the response and the feedback.
Yeah.
And how that is responded to and re-articulated as an indication of that the person, the recipient, has actually understood what has been said.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's what I always understood. That's what communication was or is. It's an exchange.
It's I read an article a few years ago by a gentleman called Jazz Coleman. Now, Jazz Coleman is the singer and lyricist for a band called Killing Joke, who were popular in the 70s and 80s. They're kind of considered the godfathers of industrial music, the electronics and heavy guitars, etc. Well, he's an incredibly intelligent man, and he's also worked with the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra, for example, and he's written symphonies. There's a really interesting piece where he lives. Well, he used to live in Auckland, and I think he moved to Waiheke, but he's travelled all around the world and lived in different places. He said that as a society, we believe that we are now the most connected that we've ever been, but we are the most disconnected we've ever been. And all you need to do is walk down Queen Street and see everyone staring at a phone. And I thought, yes, that's very appropriate. We appear to be connected, but we're not. I mean, 30 years ago, someone walking down the street talking to themselves would have probably been put in the padded ward, the local hospital. Nowadays, it's someone on a Bluetooth headset. How times have changed. Maybe for better, maybe for worse. It's not my place to decide. I'm going to sound like a boomer by saying that, which apparently the young kids say is not a good thing. Producer Andrew, boomer's not good, is it? And he's laughing, so that's a no.
Right.
What have you got coming up? This podcast will come out in January, so
Sure.
have you got anything that you where people can find you? Have you got any exhibitions or any book launches or anything?
Yeah, I've just got a book that's just at the publisher at the moment being printed.
Oh wow!
It's called We Enter Thee.
We Enter Thee.
Yeah,
Okay.
We Enter
The.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So that will be coming out early next year.
Oh, that'll be amazing. Will it get the corresponding treatment upon release? Will it have the art exhibition at the same time with the performance in the book, Or is this just solely just a book piece?
At the moment, it's just a book, but that remains to be seen what I come up with in the next couple of months.
Oh, heading into Christmas. It's interesting times. It's very cool. Piet Nieuwland, thank you so much for coming in and taking some time out of your day and sitting down with us. Really appreciate it.
Right.
And on behalf of all of the listeners and the viewers of the Northland Artists Conversation, thank you so much.
Right. Thank you, Mark. I really enjoyed it.
Excellent.
Good one.
Very cool. Whew, man. Well, there we have it. Fellow listeners and viewers of the podcast, Piet Nieuwland. Man, as I said, super cool guy. He's very thoughtful. He's very measured. He's got a really cool sense of humor as well, which I enjoyed. And he was a great guy to just chat with in general. Each time we do one of these podcasts, and man, I talk about it enough. But we always get the artist to come in a little bit beforehand, and it gives me and them a chance to sort of talk about kind of how the evening's going to go, what's going to happen, and if they've got any anxiety or if they're a little bit nervous about anything, that we can kind of talk through all of that sort of stuff, and it's good. When Pete first came in, he was great. We got on really, really well right from the word go. But he was like, I've always wanted to do something like this. And, you kind of get stuck in that same pattern over and over again as a creative. Now, Pete talks with a bit of experience, decades. I mean, it's like 4 decades worth of doing it. And he's talking about, you just kind of keep going around and doing stuff. And he goes, so maybe for me, this is the opportunity to do something different and break out. And I was like, cool, man, what a great way to look at it. With everything that happened, with us having to reschedule him, that was the first time that had ever happened. He could have gone, no, I don't want to do it. But he came back and he was super cool and he absolutely killed it. He was a great guest. Super cool, really took to it, and you can even see it in the podcast. I think he thoroughly enjoyed himself, which is amazing. Big takeaways for me, there were a lot. Biking the whole length of New Zealand from Bluff to Kaikoui. Talking about his time working within the Department of Conservation. It was really, really cool. Starting off in Kaikoui, moving on down to Whangarei, how he spent a couple of years just sort of wandering in the wilderness, writing poetry when he was living in Auckland. I mean, he's so many cool stories. And how amazing were we? We got 3 different poetry readings and never had that before, and it's so cool to see these artists come in and just try stuff and do stuff, and it's been amazing. And we got to hear a poem of his from the mid 80s, then the mid 90s, all the way through to his most recent work in 2020 that he released, or 2021. And as a listener or viewer, you get to see and hear that evolution of his work, and for me that was amazing. So where can you, the listener or viewer, check out this podcast? Well, for the visuals, you can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, all Northland Artists Conversation. There'll be some text somewhere down there. For audio, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Again, Northland Artists Conversation. Text will be somewhere around here. And if you are an artistic person, if you have any type of creative output at all, and you aren't on our radar, we would love to hear from you. 2023 is going to be an amazing year for us. So please feel free to reach out, and you can contact us by emailing hello@northlandartistsconversation.co.nz. Super simple. We've tried to keep everything as grouped together as possible. So Northland Artists Conversation, pretty much everything. And if you want to donate a little bit more to the podcast, give a little bit more, show a little bit more love, we also have a Patreon page. And Patreon is a way to give something back. We've been doing this for, I think this will be episode 30, somewhere around there. It's pretty good. We've been doing this since June. But we have 2 tiers at Patreon level. We have cup of coffee. It's $5 a month. Not much. Let's be honest. It's like $1 something a week. And then the second tier we have is Coffee Addict. And Coffee Addict is $20 a month. That gives you a few extras that you don't normally get. You get a shout out on the podcast, which I will do very, very soon. And if you have any questions for any of the artists we're going to be interviewing, I put out a list of the different artists that we're going to be interviewing in that tier, that Coffee Addict tier. So if you have a question that you do want to ask, you just simply join, go to that tier and sign up, and then when those artists come out, if you have a question, I will ask the guest that particular question. That's super cool. It's a great way to do it. So we currently have 2 patrons, and I want to shout out both of them. First one is former guest Lauren Roach. Lauren, thank you so much. It's absolutely amazing. And our second patron is Michael Boda, also a former guest as well. Guys, thank you very much. Your support does mean a lot to us. We really appreciate it. Where can you find Patreon? You go www.patreon.com/Northland Artists Conversation, or go to Google, type in Patreon, that's Patreon, and then in the top right-hand corner, search Northland Artists Conversation, and you will see us there. It's amazing. It's pretty cool. So, this is, we're in January of the new year. It's pretty cool. Good to see the sun. When we recorded this in December, it was raining, and it was a bit odd. So, sun's out. Good times. I plan on actually making sure I get to the beach. Northland has got some of the absolute best beaches throughout New Zealand. Huge fan of Marapuri and Ahipara as well. Beautiful spots. So I'm going to go from my camera to the wide. Guys, thank you so much for watching or listening to the Northland Artists Conversation. My name is Mark Kelly. My co-host Andrew McKenzie normally sits there. Thanks, Mark. And thanks very much for checking us out, and we will see you guys real soon.